Last week was chock full of games news that I'm interested in, so I thought I'd do one of these news roundup thoughts on videos. I might start doing these more regularly, but never on a schedule. When there's enough stuff to talk about and I have something to say about it, I'll do one. We're starting off with a story that you've probably heard about, but if you haven't, it's pretty special. Last week, IGN put out a review for the game Dead Cells in both video and text format, just like they do for any other game. The very same day that review was published, YouTuber Boomstick Gaming posted a video accusing IGN of copying his review. In the video, he compared his review from back in July with IGN's, and by the end of his video, it's pretty obvious that he's onto something.
In Dead Cells, you'll need to kill your way through a labyrinth of levels, all punctuated by boss encounters that starts off quite linear, but the more you play, the more routes and game mechanics will open up to you.
In Dead Cells, you fight your way through an ever-changing labyrinth of levels with branching paths.
You might not be able to make it to the final boss on your current run, but if you can manage to salvage some blueprints for some new gear, or better yet, an ability-altering rune, it makes it all worth your while even if you can see your death just around the corner. This is the type of roguelike that, yeah, sure, you could beat the boss on your first attempt, but you're probably not going to and you're not supposed to. Let's stop there, let's see what Philip has to say next.
You're almost guaranteed not to make it all the way through on every run, but as your efforts lead you to blueprints that unlock new gear, it makes it all worth your while.
Dead Cells figures out an intriguing way to have your roguelite and Metroidvania experience all in one by focusing on your failures and urging you to try something new the next time.
Dead Cells strikes a perfect and engaging balance between the Metroidvania and roguelite experiences by focusing on your failures and urging you to experiment each time you do fail.
Many of the lines in IGN's review convey the same ideas as Boomstick Gaming's, just phrased in a slightly different way. After the video spread, IGN removed the review and started an investigation. They concluded that there were indeed substantial similarities, and as a result, they fired the writer of this review. It's important to note that these are the actions of the individual that wrote the review and not IGN as a whole, but needless to say, it's not a good look. The dislikes and negative comments on their YouTube channel eased up after they put out the statement, but this incident will stick with them forever, like too much water. Of course, I think this blatant plagiarism is bad, and it could happen to anyone that does reviews on YouTube or elsewhere. I don't doubt that it might have happened before, and could happen again in the future. People take shortcuts, people cheat. It's nothing new. But you don't expect to see this kind of behavior from people that are working paid, supposedly professional jobs at one of the largest, if not the largest, video game outlet in the world. Now, IGN did handle this situation in the best possible way they could have by promptly firing the writer and then having someone else write a new review, but to me, a story like this is just further confirmation that the relevance of these large gaming outlets is on the decline. Think about this. A guy with 12,000 subs passed as an IGN review. I don't mean that as an insult to Boomstick Gaming, it's just to say that anyone can do what someone over at IGN or any other gaming outlet does. You don't need a journalism degree or a job title to write a competent review. The way I see it, the only leverage these big gaming press names have over independent creators are more access and an air of professional legitimacy, two advantages that I think they're slowly losing. This should be the end of the story and my commentary on it, but guess what? The guy who wrote the original plagiarized review decided to grab the nearest shovel and dig himself into an even deeper hole by way of a video he posted to his YouTube channel responding to the controversy. In the video, he claims that his review process involves looking at
all resources that I have available to me before I start formulating my own critical opinions so that I can offer the most cohesive possible review.
And then he says that
the bottom line is that what happened with the Dead Cells review was not at all intentional.
To be clear, I don't think for 1 second that he deserves the harassment that he claims he and his family are receiving, but he acts like the similarities between the two reviews are a pure coincidence, and I don't know who he thinks he's fooling. It wasn't one line or phrase that he might have heard in Boomstick Gaming's review that subconsciously stuck in his head, it was a clear pattern throughout his review. He says he's taking responsibility, but he doesn't admit to doing what he was fired by IGN for. He also addresses the Kotaku article that alleges he plagiarized another review from Nintendo Life. He categorically denies it as a smear campaign by Jason Schreier, but let's take a look at the video uploaded by the writer of that Nintendo Life review.
It doesn't play exactly like the PS4 and Xbox One versions of the game do. The animations and physics are definitely not as fluid, and the pacing feels slightly faster, ultimately leaving the game feeling a little less realistic and slightly more arcadey. But when you're playing the game, it actually works really well, and it's easy to look past the graphical setbacks. Because whether you're playing docked or undocked, the game seems to run at a consistent 60 frames per second, which looks silky smooth and really leaves you feeling like you're having a true AAA home console experience, but on a console that you can take with you on the go. However, when you get up close and get a good look at some of the character models, it's pretty clear that they do have a good amount of less detail than the Xbox One and PS4 versions of the game do. But any real imperfections are pretty much unnoticeable during gameplay.
It looks like he did with this FIFA review the exact same thing he did with the Dead Cells review. Identical ideas and phrases, just slightly reworded. Without a doubt, this guy's credibility is ruined forever with no chance of recovery, and his response video only made things worse. He says he loves doing what he does, but if you really do love it, you wouldn't blatantly copy someone else's content. That's not the behavior of someone that enjoys what they're doing. Shortly after writing this, I found out that he had deleted his video in response to the backlash, so I'd imagine that he's just going to keep a low profile until this whole thing dies down a little, which is what he should have done from the start. In my Best Games of 2016 video, Doom was runner-up for Game of the Year. It was a phenomenal shooter, especially on PC, that was somehow able to live up to the legacy of the legendary franchise that it was rebooting. I suspected that we would learn about its sequel this year at E3, and we did, sort of. I was disappointed and confused when Bethesda decided to announce the sequel at E3, but hold off on showing gameplay until QuakeCon. Just like every Bethesda E3 presentation since 2016, they didn't have much to show, so having this gameplay there would have done a lot to make it more worthwhile, but I don't run Bethesda, so it's not my problem. At QuakeCon, they had a proper presentation, and while I think this is the kind of game where it would be cooler to just show it and not say anything at all, they did at least spend most of the time showing the game. Just like the original Doom 2, there's Hell on Earth, and that was most of what was shown in the gameplay, but they say it's just one of the many locations in Doom Eternal. Some of the places they teased look drastically different, and location variety is something that Doom 2016 didn't have too much of, so it's a welcome addition. Aside from more locations, I had no idea what I wanted or expected them to do with this sequel. They could have just played it really safe, but that is not at all what they did. This looks to be a proper sequel that reinvigorates every aspect of its predecessor. In particular, the movement system seems to have been expanded upon the most. The first game gave you the ability to double jump and vault, and the stages were built around that. This time around, the super shotgun has a grappling hook that lets you close the gap between enemies, and there's this new dash ability too. I'd imagine you either press shift or double tap on WASD to activate it, and the meter in the bottom left corner above health and armor suggests that it will be upgradable as you progress through the game, as it only has 2 bars in this early gameplay footage. That's not even everything though, there's even climbable walls and swinging. There's also a ton of new weapons, and it looks like most, if not all of the returning weapons have been overhauled. There's a shoulder-mounted flamethrower, a laser sword, and an arm-mounted blade that allows for all new glory kill animations. The plasma rifle, my least favorite weapon from the first game, returns here, but it now fires electric orbs and looks a lot more satisfying to use. One of the very few problems I had with the first game was that it was hard to tell how much health some of the beefier enemies had left. But now with this destructible demon system, you can tell based on how they look. It sounds like a really subtle change, and it is, but I think it will have a huge impact on the feel of the game, even if the average player doesn't recognize that this is the reason why. Competitive multiplayer is making a return, and this time it's being made by id themselves, but more interesting to me is the new multiplayer mode where other players can invade your campaign as a demon. You can opt out if you don't want it, but it sounds promising to me. This will be the first game using id Tech 7, but based on this gameplay footage, it doesn't seem to be a massive step up visually from the first game, which is fine and makes sense, seeing as they still have to support base PS4 and Xbox One S. It's also going to be on Switch at launch, and if it was a dramatic leap forward from the previous game, I don't think that would be possible. I'm still not so sure about the name. It makes it sound more like a platform for user creations than it does a sequel to the first game, but ironically, Snap Map has been cut in favor of official single-player DLC. I swear, it's almost like they're making this game just for me. This game looks so good. It already looks better than the first one by a lot, and like I said, the first game was already great. There was no release date announced, so it's safe to assume this is a 2019 game, maybe spring at the earliest. Picking a Game of the Year for 2019 just got a lot harder. I loved Red Dead Redemption to death, and GTA 5 was one of my most anticipated games of all time, but for some reason, I've just not been all that excited for Red Dead Redemption 2. Some of that is due to it launching only on console, but even if it was launching on PC, I'm not sure how much more I would care. Of course I plan on playing it, and I'm sure it'll be good, but from what I've seen, it doesn't seem to be a generational leap forward from GTA 5 or even Red Dead Redemption 1. I thought that might change after seeing this first gameplay trailer, and well, not really. It's the exact same style of video they did for GTA 5, which I really like, but it hasn't done much to make me more excited for the game. However, it does visually look a lot better than the cinematic trailers, since it was captured and uploaded in 4K. Apparently this footage is from PS4 Pro, but I have my doubts that it's running in full native 4K. It might be able to do that on Xbox One X, but I'd guess that it's 1440p checkerboard on PS4 Pro. Aside from the resolution bump, it's a mixed bag when it comes to the game's actual assets. Certain elements look pretty much like GTA 5, rocks, grass, dirt, and wood, but then other things look like a significant step up. Character models are much better, hair looks better, and animations look more natural. Gameplay-wise, the gang is going to be this game's version of GTA 5's three main characters, but without knowing too much, I don't see how it could possibly be as interesting. There's been plenty of open-world games where you build up settlements and bases, and I don't see much more room for innovation there. They show the player bringing the camp meat, playing card games with them, doing missions, nothing too crazy, so we'll have to see how that turns out. The other thing that stuck out to me was the civilian NPC interaction, which is something that I've always wanted in a ROCKSTAR game. It's limited to a few different options that are bound to single buttons, but still, it's going to make the world a lot more immersive.
Talk yourself into trouble with a local tough guy.
Clear out.
Or out of trouble with a town sheriff. Or intimidate a witness into silence, and more.
Keep your mouth shut, or you're dead, friend. You don't want to involve yourself with this.
Confrontations can be escalated or diffused.
Take it easy. Do what you want. I don't care.
I just don't understand why this game isn't coming to PC on day one, though. You'd think they did most of the heavy lifting when they ported GTA 5 to PC, much like how Bethesda ported Skyrim to 8th gen as practice for Fallout 4. Maybe they're just playing the long game and want to spread their sales numbers over a long period of time like they did with GTA 5. Maybe they'll even put it on PS5 and Xbox 4, who knows. If you have any of your own thoughts on these topics, feel free to leave a comment down below, and until next time, thanks for watching.